Welcome to a weekly review of North Dakota's legislative news. Now, here's your host, Dave Thompson, with North Dakota Legislative Review.
And hello, I'm Dave Thompson. Thanks for joining us. To say that the legislature hit the ground running is probably an understatement because legislators have gotten into big issues right away. For example, the state revenue forecast was reduced by both the House and Senate Appropriations Committee by $75 million. Reasons: we had reduced oil prices, they're worried about that, and also natural gas revenue, as well as some weakness perhaps in the agricultural economy. Another big issue that's starting out this session is whether or not to have the Sunday opening laws repealed. We cannot open stores before Sunday in North Dakota, before noon on Sunday in North Dakota, and there is a bill to repeal that, and held its first hearing this week, and a lot of people testified. And another thing that was interesting is that Governor Burgum appeared before two legislative committees this week. One, he testified in favor of his Theodore Roosevelt Library and Museum for Medora, and he also testified before Senate Appropriations regarding the Fargo-Moorhead diversion. We're joined now by political correspondent Chad Mira. Chad is at the Capitol, and he's talking about something unexpected in last week's State of the State address.
One of the more memorable, most emotional moments of the legislative session so far came right at the beginning during the governor's State of the State address. Take a listen.
In the spirit of that mutual respect, we're honored to announce that the governor's office today will begin to display the flags of the 5 tribal nations with whom we share geography, alongside our state and national flags, outside the governor's office in Memorial Hall.
I'm joined now by Senator Richard Marsolais. Senator Marsolais, thanks for being here. We're standing in front of the tribal flags here. This is something you've been trying to get on display at the Capitol for several years now. So what does it mean being able to stand here and see it come to fruition?
It means a lot because I've been 4 sessions. This is the 4th session. I've been trying to get the flags displayed somewhere in the Capitol where the public can view them. It's very emotional right now for me because I've been working on this for 4 sessions, and I'm glad the governor made the decision to put our flags up, but we do have a ceremonial that we go through with the flag ceremony with all of the tribes.
Were you aware the governor was going to make that announcement, or did that come as a surprise to you as well?
It came as a surprise to me also. I had some legislators ask me if I knew it was coming. I said no.
A good surprise, though.
Yes, it was.
So you used to be chairman of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. So on a more personal note, tell us the significance of having these flags here in the Capitol for you and the tribes as well.
Well, I think it shows a good tribal-state relationship between the state and the tribes. Like you mentioned, I was a tribal chairman from 2008 to 2010. I was the first tribal chairman, state senator in the United States. I carried both hats. Did a lot of work in that amount of time, in 2 years, as a tribal chairman.
And we're going to hopefully have a special ceremony coming up shortly that incorporates the flags. Is that right?
That's correct. I've been notifying the veteran service officer at each tribe. What we'll do is bring in a drum group along with a spiritual leader and the honor guards, and someone to come in and explain each nation's flag and what it means to our nations.
Okay, Senator Marsolais, thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you.
Dave?
We are now joined by the Senate Majority Leader. He's Rich Wardner, State Senator from Dickinson. He's a Republican. Senator, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dave, and I appreciate you having me.
Now, one thing that leadership decided to do this time, which was interesting, you gavelled in for the State of the State address, and then for that Friday and that Monday, you didn't gavel in at all, so they were not legislative days. Tell me why you did that.
Well, we did it, first of all, to save legislative days because we might need them later on. And the other thing is that we were working. We were working anyway. The first day we did gavel in. We had the state of the state budget and budget, and along with the state of the tribal and the state of the judiciary. We had that. And then on Friday, our committees worked all day. They got legislation out. We're not ready for a floor session right away because there's no bills out. And then on Monday, the A committees went to work, and it worked out perfect. We had 16 bills on the calendar on Tuesday, and we got we got off very efficiently and got things going.
I think efficiency is a big thing there, because you had people voting on bills, then you can move them to the other chamber if they pass. And you know, it kind of speeds things up a little bit in terms of floor action.
It did. It speeded up, and I'll tell you what, it really speeded up, because we're going, I think, 110 miles an hour up there, because it's been very, very busy and very intense. And in your opening, you did talk about some of the issues, but there's a lot more. There seems to be a lot of issues that have to be dealt with this time.
There are a lot of issues, but I did want to talk to you about the $75 million reduction in the governor's budget in terms of revenue. Comfortable with that? Were you comfortable with making that reduction?
Very comfortable. I will just tell you that we rather be conservative on this forecast. Remember, we will have another forecast in March, and then we will adjust to that. And we feel a lot better having to put more money back in rather than having to cut it. So this is not the final forecast budget that we're going to use. We're going to use the one in March. That'll be the final one, and we think that this one is conservative. We know that, and but we also know that when we get to March, if there's some things, some priorities that need to be replenished, we will.
And I suppose after what happened 2 years ago, there's a bit of caution perhaps to make sure you get it right.
That's right. It's always easier to give than to take away, and we are cautious and on the cautious side, because we saw what happened last time.
Now, one of the things that you've been shepherding through, or had been shepherding through for a while, was dubbed Operation Prairie Dog. It's about the infrastructure bill and spending for infrastructure statewide. I know it's going to start in the House, and that I assume that was by design.
Yes, it was, and I want the people to know that Operation Prairie Dog is an infrastructure bill. It's about building out infrastructure in the state, roads, streets, sewer, water, things that are very much needed in our state. And what it does is, in oil country, in the 9 major oil counties, it stays the same. There's no change. The only thing that they get is we're not going to have a sunset on the bill, so that they can rely on the revenue coming in. There's reliability. Before, we always had it into, well, you know, the sunset every 2 years. Well, is it going to be reinstated or isn't it? So there was apprehension, and the political cities, schools, counties out there were not able to plan. We added to that non-oil entities, which puts the whole state involved in this. And we have a part of it, $115 million that goes to cities, and then there's $115 million that goes to counties and townships, and then there's $50 million for airports. And we have a lot of infrastructure in the state that's out of date and needs to be taken care of in our cities, and our counties and townships have roads that need to be taken care of.
So far, I've been hearing a lot of support for the concept of infrastructure spending in this way. Has there been any pushback from anybody?
Oh, there's been a couple of people that kind of pushed back a little bit. The governor isn't real happy about it. He's afraid that some of the bigger cities are going to use it to expand. I don't think that's a secret. I assure him that no, they're going to need it in the interior and take care of existing infrastructure that is old and needs to be replaced. There are many of our cities, anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 in our state, that do have infrastructure problems, streets and sewer and water that have to be taken care of. So it's going to really be a boost to them. And we have counties that have roads that need to be taken care of, especially bridges. That seems to be a big issue. The county money went out as to the Upper Great Plains Transportation Institutes. They had a study, and they had a 20-year need study. That's how that money went out. And we're going to have them to continue to study townships and counties. So in the future, it'll be based on that, because this is not a one biennium deal. This is to go on into the future. And the cities, in how we appropriated the money, we looked at population, we looked at population changes, we looked at valuations, and density. And of course, density, the larger cities would get that. And so we think we've got no pushback from the cities or the counties or the townships. They feel that it's all fair, but And there's a couple of people in the legislature that have their doubts about it. They're afraid we're doing too much. But I'll tell you, if we put money into our infrastructure, we're going to be able to grow and meet the needs of the future.
Another issue along that, well, not about infrastructure, but along the same line, has been talked about by for a number of sessions, at least 3 that I'm aware of, and that's the whole behavioral health issue. There seems to be more of a push toward more investment in community-based services. Am I correct?
No, you are correct, and we're working on that. We want to get our services out in our communities. You know, right now, they are transporting, like out of our community in Dickinson, we transport to Bismarck, to Fargo, to Jamestown, to Minot, wherever we can find a place to go. We need more resources out in the communities so that it will be cheaper in taking care of these people. And yes, we finally know enough about behavioral health, which would mean addiction and mental health, it includes them both, so that we're at a point where we realize that we need to do something about it. It affects us all, and we need to put resources into that.
Isn't a big problem in western North Dakota is lack of workforce?
It is. It is lack of workforce. And so every time we get an addiction counselor, every time we get someone that works in mental health, we want to keep them. And we don't want the services to go away, so we want to kind of push these so that these services are out there so we can keep these people.
How big a bite of an apple will come out of the session, do you think?
All I know is we're going to increase what we've been doing. You know, we've only been spending around $9–10 million on it. If we double that, that'll be in the right direction. I think we need to do more than that, but we need to keep moving the ball in this area because it affects us in our schools, it affects us in our communities, and it affects our workforce. It's having a tremendous effect on our whole economy and community.
One other human service issue that's come up recently, of course, is the nursing homes and the reimbursements. The governor is going to increase it by 1%. He's proposing to increase it by 1% per year in the next 2 years of the biennium. Nursing homes say that that's not enough. They want to go to 3%. Where do you land on that?
Well, I think we need to go to the 3%. I will tell you why, and it's because they didn't get anything last time. The nursing homes got nothing last biennium. Plus the fact that because we're an equal rate state, that means that the private pay have to be the same as the Medicaid pay. Therefore, when we lowered the Medicaid, because we didn't have the dollars, the private pays come down, which is fair. But for the nursing home, they lost in both categories. So they not only didn't get a raise, they were cut. Now we come to this biennium, and they're asking for a 3%. We're trying to reinstate some of that. That's all we're doing. And we have a lot of small nursing homes that are going to go under if they don't get to 3%.
Now, I've been hearing a lot of talk about a concept that was tried a few sessions ago, at least a couple of sessions anyway, that always failed, but the idea of a provider tax for nursing homes. Have you been hearing anything about that?
I guess I have, because I put the bill in.
You did?
I haven't put it in yet, but I've had it drafted. So I'm the one that the governor, he might not be too happy with me, but that's fine. But I'm just telling you that it's not something that I like. And if we can fund it without doing the provider tax, in the end, we will. But if we have to use the provider tax to make things meet, and it's a one biennium deal, we will do it.
So it's a stopgap measure in case the money's not there.
It's a stopgap and only will be used if necessary.
No, earlier in the show we talked about the governor going to a couple of committees and talking about some of his issues. One, of course, is the Theodore Roosevelt Museum and Library, which is now proposed for Medora. I'm hearing some grumbling about that, perhaps, that there may be a heavy lift to get that through.
Well, I think it will be a heavy lift, and especially at $50 million. I haven't heard of many legislators that feel that we should put $50 million into that. I understand that that would be huge for the state, but we have some other needs that are just as important, and it would be pretty hard to defend sending $50 million for this. Now, I know that the governor really comes down hard on the fact we're going to put in 50 and we're going to get 100, meaning it's a 2-for-1, and it's going to be quite a shot to the state. I understand that, but I don't think that the citizens of this state think we can afford that. I've given him a counter proposal, and it's less than that, and I don't know if that'll have a chance either. But it's the whole legislature that has to deal with that.
Yet you're thinking that the concept is a sound one to do something like this, but 50 million is probably too big an amount right now.
Absolutely, and yeah, in the end, we may have tourism that we've never had before. It may be lots of dollars, but we also have other areas like agriculture that need some help too, and research and things of that nature in order to bring more dollars into the state too. So some other projects that we've got going that I think are going to be a positive to the ag and the ag commodities and the ag economy.
Do you have a couple examples of those projects?
We sure do. I would like to see us build the Ag Development Center at NDSU. Right now it's Harris Hall. It's an antique. It's a place where they bring all the trade groups to North Dakota and show how our commodities can be made into products, and then they sell them on using our grains and our commodities, and we need to have a first-class operation. This Ag Development Center not only would be about crops, but also about meats. And so I believe it will be huge for the ag community in North Dakota if we can get that built.
Do you think that money will come from the earnings of the Legacy Fund?
Well, that's one place it could come from. A lot of people want to take money from the earnings, but we still have a lot of room to bond on 1%, or excuse me, 10% of the 1 cent. We have room there because we haven't bonded for a long time. I'm not a big bonding guy, but I want to tell you this, Dave. If we don't get moving on these things, it's going to be too late. The costs go higher, and these producers out here, they need the research now. And to give you an example, if you take a look at the greenhouses at NDSU, and you look at what they've done with the genetics and the crops and stuff in North Dakota, it's fantastic. It's like one guy said, you know, my corn prices are not very high, but my production is huge. I'm going to be all right.
Well, you did mention that costs do go up, and of course there are a couple of huge water projects out there. The Effingham Diversion Project, which the cost has gone up another $300 million, and there's the Red River Valley Water Supply Project. Just briefly, you looked at both projects. What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you, there's more than that. There's those two, plus there's the NAS project into Minot and Minot flood protection. We're going to have to sit down with those communities and plan a strategy, because all of the money comes from the Resources Trust Fund. It's 20% of the extraction tax. That's where the funding comes from. We don't have enough funding to fund all those things. So we're going to have a strategy out into the future and get everything prioritized, and they're going to have to work together to get this done. So we hope we have a plan here.
It's funny you should mention that, because Garland Eberle, the state engineer for the Water Commission, said the same thing, that if you just look at it from raw numbers, the water projects are underfunded. And it's because you've just got those sources that are that's the Natural Resources Trust Fund, which is funded by some oil money, but also the tobacco settlement, and those are finite sources.
Well, that's right, and we might end up taking some money out of some other pots in the oil distribution formula. We could, but we have other needs too. And I will tell you, one of the big concerns of the water community, and especially the small guys, they say, well, those big guys are going to take all the money. There won't be anything for us. Well, we can't let that happen. So we got to have some type of a percentage that goes to the big projects and into the other projects, so that everybody can continue to provide water to the rest of the state and take care of their water projects.
We only have a couple of minutes left, and I have to ask you this question. You did not vote for the Sunday repealer bill last time. Are you reconsidering that this time?
I will reconsider it. I will tell you, when you take a look at it, everything's open. The businesses that are closed, if you go there, everybody's working inside. I mean, it's kind of doesn't make sense. They're still working. I know the people can't go in. And it's been a kind of a moral issue with me. I just feel that Sunday should be a day for the family, but I think the horse is out of the barn. I just think that to say that certain businesses can't be open and then you go a block and everything else is open. The other thing that kind of, I'll be honest with you, is the bars are open on more Sundays and the liquor establishments are open on more Sundays than our retail.
Okay. Very briefly, how many days for this session?
Well, I'm going to say 73, but I'm going to shoot for that, but I'm not going to go to the bank and do any betting on it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for taking the time, Senator. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Senator Rich Wardner, our guest on Legislative Review. Now we go back to our political correspondent, Chad Mira, with a look at a possible reform in our education system.
Lawmakers come into this session with a lot to consider when it comes to changes to our education system. The Innovative Education Task Force spent more than a year studying ways to improve K-12 education, and now the final report is out.
It's a unique learning environment for kids here at the Innovation School.
Do you see it?
Just ask the executive director, Maggie Barth.
We really try to follow the interests of the child.
Given her role with the Innovation School, it makes sense that Barth is on the Innovative Education Task Force.
I decided to apply because I feel really strongly that education does need to change.
Governor Doug Burgum formed the task force in 2017. Here he is at this year's State of the State address.
Our goal to ensure that our K-12 and higher education systems are best equipped to adapt to new technologies and delivery methods and prepare students for success in the fast-changing digital economy.
Just in time for the legislative session, its final report is out. It ranks 10 recommendations. Number 1 for Barth and the task force.
Flexible graduation requirements.
Because every student is different.
They have different interests and they have different strengths, and when we pin them into a box that they have to do these certain things, it sort of standardizes them instead of letting them be who they are.
Sorry kids, that doesn't mean you can graduate by skipping science class.
What the idea is that, let's say instead of you having to take biology, if you're really interested in a different science, you could use that towards your graduation requirements.
Right now, students are given credits based on how many hours they're in the classroom, but the task force wants kids to have other ways to earn credits.
That might free up some time for students to go do internships or to do work study type of work instead of having to be stuck in a classroom to these certain amount of hours and this certain amount of seat time when they're really just checking the boxes at that point instead of growing.
It's this kind of flexibility that Barth said is working for her students at the Innovation School.
Chad joins us now to talk about what's upcoming. What are you kind of looking at?
Well, let's stick with education first. A lot of these ideas coming from the task force, those are things that might not really come to fruition, if at all, until maybe the next biennium, 2021. But I know something you've been following personally as well is it involves a change to the state constitution, and that has to do with pulling colleges and universities' names out of the state constitution. Maybe you can elaborate the reasoning behind that would be.
Representative Rick Becker has that bill. It'd be a constitutional amendment. You'd pull the names and the missions of the colleges out of the Constitution. And he says the reason he did it is because colleges have to change. You've got actually declining enrollment for a while, and you've got more distance learning type things. You've got more people who are taking online courses. And by having these names in the Constitution, then you're kind of hamstrung by the Constitution if you wanted to close institutions. He didn't say closing institutions, but that's been some of the things in the past that have been reasons to do that, to pull those out of the Constitution. And speaking of education, there's still K-12 funding. We haven't had the hearing on that yet, and I think that's going to be extremely interesting.
Absolutely, and one of the things we've heard a lot about leading up to the biennium is behavioral health resources for our students. We heard Senator Wardner touch on behavioral health a little bit in your interview with him. So we'll have to see how behavioral health and school safety plays a role moving forward in the legislative session.
Then, of course, there are those interesting bills that affect a lot of people, but aren't really the heavy lifts.
Right.
And I'm thinking about the one that is going to increase speed limits on the interstates
Sure.
from 75 to 80, and on roads like 83 and 85 that are, 4-lane highways, from 70 to 75. I think that's going to be an extremely interesting discussion.
Yeah, it's something we've heard debated in the past, and it's definitely an interesting debate. People in South Dakota, they just passed a similar law just a few years ago, and some research has showed people caught speeding now are speeding at higher rates because the speed limit's higher. Kind of makes sense. But you know, the argument for it is technology has improved, people are safer drivers, the cars are safer, so we're ready for the increased speed limit. And
of course, we got the bill to have seatbelt become primary enforcement instead of secondary enforcement. That's going to be interesting too. And when that gets to the floor, I think it's going to be very interesting.
Absolutely. Of course, the primary enforcement means you can now be pulled over for a seatbelt violation as opposed to as a secondary, you have to be pulled over for, say, speeding first, and then the seatbelt violation would be added onto that.
Lots of issues, lots of subjects to talk about, and we'll be here again next week. I'm Dave Thompson. Thanks for joining us for North Dakota Legislative Review.